Viewer beware, you're in for spoilers if you continue this scare.
It is I, Bumps of the Night. I've returned with another review of Goosebumps. What am I wearing, you're asking? It's the Haunted Mask. Might as well be, it's generic enough. Alright, all shenanigans aside here. Jeez. I did pick this up. It was $2. It just reminded me so much of the one from the series. I was like, why not? It'll be a fun little gag. Long time no review. It's been a week. Haven't talked to you guys since Night of Living Dummy dropped, and that was a great episode. This week we got episode number 7, Give Yourself Goosebumps. This episode picks up with kind of a long recap. It just kind of goes over everything that's happened, which makes sense. This is going week by week. If you had forgotten, this refreshes your memory, which, I'm not going to lie, I was not thrilled with this episode. It wasn't bad, but it was not very strong. I guess just kind of let's delve into it. It picks up where Harold / Mr. Brett, but it's Harold, is telling the kids about his past and how he died because the kids were getting Slappy away from him. And he kind of freaks out on them, and they're like, dude, why? How would you know any of this? And he's like, oh, because I'm Harold. After that, the kids realize that they're trapped, and it even cuts back to the real world. And that goes back to the trailer. The kids have black eyes. That is because they're trapped inside the book. But we knew that from the 5th episode when Rita Beware came out, when Margot went in the book. But anyway, all the kids are now trapped inside the scrapbook. And while they're looking for ways out, they open a door and they see like a black abyss they could fall into, which kind of felt like House of No Return. That was kind of neat. While they're rummaging around the house, they bump into Mr. Brett. More of the plot takes place more so on the outside of the scrapbook than on the inside of the scrapbook this time. The scrapbook is just a holding place for the kids, and the plot revolves around the parents more so than the kids. In this episode, Nora, who is Lucas's mom, gets out of the mental asylum. She gives all the pills that Isabel's mom was giving her back to her, and she's just like, I see you, bitch. Then she goes to her family shed, where in the episode Go Eat Worms, Lucas found the eyeball, which was Slappy's eyeball, collects a bunch of dummy pieces, which are Slappy, and takes off. Meanwhile, Margot's dad, the guidance counselor, bumps into her, and he's like, hey, what the hell? You're not talking to me. And she's like, I don't have time for you right now. I'm leaving. And he's like, you're just like my wife. Sucks for him because he's an outsider and there's this inside group of people dealing with something he just can't seem to relate. So anyway, she takes off and he just kind of, they have that funny moment where he's like, I'm not mad at your plants, so I'll water them, but you. Then goes to, because the plot demands it, Isaiah's dad, who is the guy who tore Slappy apart in the memory. He's talking to Isaiah's dad about, like, is Nora really that crazy? I just don't understand. And he mentions, like, it was just funny. Like, and I know what they were doing. They set the whole thing up to keep the plot moving. But he's like, did you guys, like, run over a doll or something in high school? And Isaiah's dad got all, like, he tensed up. He tensed up because he knew exactly what he was talking about. So then Isaiah's dad, like, gets up mid-conversation and just leaves. And then Margot's dad's just like, it's got to be them. It's not me, which was funny. Like, we cut back in the scrapbook, and the kids bump into Mr. Brett. His subconscious is trapped in the scrapbook because Harold's piloting his body, which, okay. I was expecting them to fight a monster or something in there, but whatever. From that point in time, they all start kind of like trying to powwow and bounce ideas off each other on how to get out. And Isabella sees a light flash from underneath the door. And so they open the door and they see there's like this giant black abyss. They decide, hey, one of us will jump into it. And Isabella's like, I'll do it. And Isaiah's like, nah, Lucas, do it. And, it makes sense. Lucas does a lot of dumb shit, but Lucas is like, not me, dog. And, there's some tension between Isaiah and Lucas because they both like Margot. But then I feel like during this episode, they kind of push Isabella towards Isaiah. It's weird. And let's not forget still that Margot and Lucas's mom and dad are kind of like, they kissed in this episode, so it's weird. It's weird. Whatever. We get to the point where they rip down a bunch of curtains in the house. They make a makeshift, like, rope. Isabella ties it around herself, and she jumps into this light in the darkness. As she descends, she ends up in a high school, or the high school, but at the high school in the 90s. And you know this because there's a picture of President Bush on the wall, which is just like, ha. Then she walks down a dark hallway after she hears Slappy laughing, ends up in front of a mic and a stool, and then you can just hear, like, multiple laughter. And it does a really, really quick shot of a crowd of people, and they're all puppets, which is either one, those are all the victims Slappy has turned into puppets, having people use his spell, like Biddle's grandfather and Biddle himself did. Or they hint at, and when she gets back to the house with everyone at, which we'll get there in a second, or it's a shot of the future, essentially insinuating Slappy's grand plan is to become a human himself and turn everyone into his puppet slaves and make the world listen to him. That's my guess. After she sees all the puppet people, the school starts to shake, so she decides she's getting out of there. She starts running, and what really is happening is the possessed version of Mr. Brett, Harold, rips a piece of a scrapbook out and spits, I'm assuming, gum into it, which, why you couldn't just spit it out the window? But then again, gotta keep the plot rolling. In the real world, Nora is driving Slappy up to their family cabin, and Harold / Mr. Brett is following them. While Isabella is being pulled up, Mr. Brett gets pulled against a wall and slaps his face, and he disappears. When he gets hit, it pulls him out of the ghost world, or wherever they're at, back to his body. But as soon as he makes eye contact with a reflection of Harold, he gets pulled back to the ghost realm, or wherever he's hidden. Isabella derives everything she learned while she was in that little pocket dimension, and Brett informs the kids that, hey, Payne sends me back to the real world. So they just start clocking the shit out of him, trying to get him to write them an ending to get out of the book, because they're trapped in the scrapbook. So a lot of back and forth where it's just like, you see Brett going to the real world and then coming back to the house, and Brett going to the real world and back to the house. And while this is happening, our third party in play would be Isaiah's dad and James's mom pull up on the old family mine that James's family owns, where we find out, after Isaiah's dad descends deep into the mine, that's where Slappy was originally buried. And then he's greeted by a really dirty James clone, which back to the Cuckoo Clock of Doom, we thought they had all popped. There was one left. At least one. There could be more, but there was at least one more. He drops the rope and traps Isaiah's dad down in the mine, and then goes after his mom, well, James's mom, it's the clone. Picks up a piece of wood, and he's like, oh, I'm going to beat that ass. And there was some kind of like adult-like conversation there. Insinuated he was doing drugs, and he's like, takes one to know one, which, again, I can see how people don't like that. It doesn't really fit the Goosebumps vibe, but I get it. For the target audience they're shooting for, it makes sense. I'm not justifying it, I'm just saying I understand. Anyway, Isaiah's dad magically climbs out, which I call bullshit, but again, gotta keep the plot rolling. He's out, and he pins James against the car, and then it kind of like spins around. James now has him, he's choking him, and then James's mom pops the clone. And they're like, oh shit, Nora was right. So now everyone knows Nora's right. Nora's traveling, Harold's following. Mr. Brett gets back into his body one more time. He's trying to open the book and write. Harold keeps like fighting him. It's just like this hand struggle, and the book gets chucked out the car window and lands in water. Now the ink's running. It flashes back to the house where the kids are. The ceiling starts dripping, and then they all fall. And then it's the end of this episode. Overall, this episode did what a couple other episodes did. It just builds. And it's not bad for that, but it is almost like we've had a lot of lore. We're still world building this late into it. I just kind of want to see a resolution. By no means was this episode bad. It did a lot of world building. It did a lot of like connect the dots. However, it's not what I was in the mood for. Last episode was really great. Night of the Living Dummy kind of really knocked it out of the park for me. And then they come into this one, and it's just real. It was lackluster. For people who don't like the show, I can see how this would be one of the turning points. Where like, oh, it's terrible, and they start throwing their popcorn and sodas, and I can hear the comments section now saying, like, this is fucking shit. How the fuck could R.L. Stein like approve this? Blah, 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 blah. I get it. I wasn't even thrilled with it. I didn't think it was bad, but I definitely didn't think it was good. It was one of the lower rated episodes, in my opinion, just because it felt so stagnant. These characters are two-dimensional. I don't really give a shit about any of them. I'm 7 episodes in, and I don't really care. I kind of want to get it done. It feels like a Band-Aid. I want to pull it off, like I want to get to the end. It feels like they're trying really hard to make this feel like a book, and it's just like, oh, the anticipation. Well, except here's the thing. You can keep reading at your own speed. Here, once a week, it's getting old. I'm not going to stop watching, but I wish I could just skip to the end of November and just watch it all at once and be done with it. But maybe I'm just being impatient. You guys tell me. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I don't think it was bad. I just didn't think it was great. Not a lot happened. I mean, overall, I'm sure this is going to pay off in the next episode, which is You Can't Scare Me. Which, by the way, they do this dumb thing where they put up the episode, which you can't play it yet, obviously, and then it has a description. So, obviously, we knew the kids were going to get out. We knew they weren't trapped. It was just kind of like oh no, what's going to happen? Like a Goosebumps cliffhanger. But it even says, like, that the kids have escaped. It's like, God damn it, why? Why would you put that at least? Like, just don't post anything. I don't know. If I was going to rate it, 4.5 out of 10. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible. I think the overall arcing story is going to go like this. Mr. Brett's going to confront Nora in the next episode. He's going to get Slappy. We're obviously going to get Slappy because it wouldn't be a Night of the Living Dummy 2 episode otherwise. We won't see Slappy come back together until episode 9. At that point in time, something major will happen because, again, it's a series like that. Slappy's plan will come to fruition, or Slappy will track down that coffin that we saw in episode 6. Harold will use Brett's body to do his bidding. I'm sure all the kids' parents will become puppets, but don't worry, they won't die this time because the kids will use something from the past to right the wrong. But essentially, I don't think it's going to be a cliffhanger that leads us to the next season. This is going to be a one-season finish. I think Slappy is the big bad in the end. Realistically, it was really weird how they kind of took it. All this, like, in retrospective, I know we were expecting anthology, and I also know, like, each of these items, like, for example, the Haunted Mask is just, like, a manifestation of Harold's haunting, but I don't know, I just was expecting different. Slappy truly was the only magical item in this because the other stuff is just manifestations of ghosts. We don't really know much about Slappy, so for all we know, he could still be carved from that cursed coffin, although now that I think about it, instead of being carved from it by a wizard, maybe that's the wizard's coffin that carved him. He's trying to resurrect his master and turn the world into his puppets. I don't know. Overall arcing story that will probably, we're not going to really see anything exciting happen until 2 episodes from now. So I feel like next week's also going to be boring. It's called You Can't Scare Me, which book wasn't that great. Can't imagine the episode's going to be that better. And yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm turned off, but it just wasn't what I was expecting, and it really was lackluster. So, although I will say this, I'm glad. I was worried. Somebody posted a picture, like a leak, and it was a shot of a vampire, like the vampire dog Fifi from Don't Feed the Vampire. I know they used her in the Goosebumps movie. I was concerned they were going to bring it back. It's like every time you do a Give Yourself book, you don't got to go there. There's like 30-something books. You don't got to go to that one. It wasn't even that great. All right, then. That's it, though. Enough bitching and ranting from me. I got a lot of stuff coming. I went to Halloween Horror Nights, hence why I sound sick now, because somebody gave me the ick in a haunted house. Spooktober's coming to a really quick ending. I'm still doing other stuff. I noticed as of today, recording this, I'm at 955 subscribers. 5 more, and I'm doing that 1,000 subscriber giveaway. What am I giving away, you ask? Well, let me show you. Oh, magical transition. Look at that. I'm giving away all this sweet shit here. So, if you're interested in winning any of this, make sure you're subscribed to me. Because if you're not subscribed by the time you hit 1,000, then you can't enter. Anyway, once we hit that 1,000, I'll explain the details on how to win some of these sweet-ass books. But until then, you know what to do. So I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, because if you don't, you can't win these. Alright guys, this has been another Goosebumps review. We'll see you in the next one.